سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. سبحانك لا فهم لنا إلا ما فهمتنا إنك أنت الجواد الكريم. وقل رب زدني علما. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. ألم تر إلى الذين أوتوا نصيبا من الكتاب يدعون إلى كتاب الله ليحكم بينهم ثم يتولى فريق منهم وهم معرضون. ذلك بأنهم قولوا لن تمسنا النار إلا أياما معدودات غرهم في دينهم ما كانوا يفترون. فكيف إذا جمعناهم ليوم لا ريب فيه ووفيت كل نفس ما كسبت وهم لا يظلمون. صدق الله مولانا العظيم. So as we mentioned several times previously, that again, like Surah Baqarah, Surah Al Imran, one of the major themes and one of the major issues or areas of concern is the situation of the Ahl Kitab, Jews and the Christians, as we mentioned. Particularly the Christians are mentioned here, and as well the Jews as well. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here mentions, Alam tara ila alladhina utu nasiban min al-kitab. Did you not see, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and of course everyone else as well should also observe. Did you not see those who have been given a portion of the book? A portion. So the portion of the book may mean, obviously when we say Al-Kitab, Kitabullah, the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Kalam Allah that has been sent down from time to time to different prophets at different times. All of that is Kalam Allah, and the final version or the completion of that entire chain is of course the Holy Quran. So the Torah, it could mean Kitab Allah, meaning the book itself, the portion of it which was sent to Musa alayhi salam. Or it can also mean, as we say, this min al-kitab. So otherwise it's explaining what is meant by the kitab. They have been given a nasib, they've been given a portion of what? Of the kitab. Or they were given a portion of the meaning of the book. So perhaps some of it they understood, some of it they didn't understand, some of it they accepted, some of it they rejected, which is probably more congruent with what is going to be said and stated hereafter. So they've been given a portion of the book, and they are, at the same time, they are being invited to the book of Allah to judge between themselves. So they have some knowledge of the book, and now they're being asked to come to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to, decide and differentiate the differences and settle the dispute between us. And there's three different things that have been mentioned that what they were disputing about. One is that it was an incident in Medina where some of the Jews brought a adulterer and adulteress to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and saying, okay, what judgment do you give for these? So Nabi alayhi wasallam said, well, what judgment do you have in your book? Knowing full well that the judgment is the rajam, it's being stoned. Under the conditions and under the conditions are met. Okay, so they said, well, we find in the book of Allah that, we give them a hard time, maybe beat them up a little bit and blacken their faces with some tar and, send them off. So Abdullah ibn Salam radiallahu anhu was who was the most, in fact, honorable and most knowledgeable of the Jewish community, who very early on accepted Islam with that pure heart and that clear understanding. Radiallahu anhu. He said, you're telling lies. He said, Ya Rasulullah, they're telling lies. In the Torah is the rajam, is the stoning of the adulteress. So they were ordered to bring the Torah and read it. So the fellow who was actually the teacher of the Torah, so he was reading, and he had his hand on a certain portion. He was reading before and reading after that. So Abdullah ibn Salam took his hand away and said, okay, what's this under your hand? That was the ayat al-rajam. So they confessed that Like you'll find many instances they were actually caught red-handed telling lies, and they actually confessed. They said, yes, yeah, Muhammad, yeah, right, correct. It's we have the idea rajum, and that is the hukum. So why did you otherwise? Well, because what happens is that if you, the same with the cutting of the hands. It's also there in the Torah. It's the order of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala from time immemorial. So they said, well, we find that what was happening was that if the rich influential person is caught, then we just and if the poor fellow is caught, this is how it always works. The penal system, even here, even now, the poor fellow who can't afford a hotshot lawyer, he's going to get caught, and the fellow who can, he's let off. So let's make it easy for everybody. So obviously this is playing around with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's one. Another is the fact that Nabi alayhi salatu at one point, was inviting the Jews and to Islam in their midrash, or their midrash, or their place of study and worship. They said, okay, what deen are you on Muhammad? Yeah, Muhammad. He said, I'm on the deen, and I'm the millat, and I'm on the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam. They said, well, Ibrahim was a Jew. So obviously, the concept of Judaism was not even present at that particular time, that came quite later, and then, of course, he said, okay, bring the Torah, and what does the Torah say? Because he knows very well the Torah also says, Ma kana Ibrahim Yahudiyan wa la Nasrana walakin kana Hanifan Muslima. He was not a Jew or a Christian, he was a upright Muslim, one who submits to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And lastly, they were called to the book of Allah, which, as we mentioned in Surah Baqarah, told them explicitly, or pointed to the characteristics of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We've mentioned that a number of times, and so they well knew that, but they left it, and they came up with their own version of reality. So they were called to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to judge among themselves, and as their abstinence and their arrogance, they were not ready to accept that. They wanted to follow their own desires, which was keeping their supremacy in their position religiously and otherwise in the community, which they thought was going to finish and it would vanish if Muhammad was accepted. So ذلك بأنهم قالوا لن تمسنا النار إلا أياما معدودات. Now, what was the premise on which they were able to make such audacious claims and refute the truth? They said that's because we're not going to be chastised by the fire except for a few days. Where did you get that? Oh, well, we worship the cow for 40 days, so we'll go for 40 days and then we get out. We'll spend one chilla, the Tablighi people, and we'll spend one chilla and we'll get out. No way. وَغَرَّهُمْ فِي دِينِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَفْتَرُونَ. And this beguiled them, these trickery and the conniving that they came up with. It actually, hoodwinked them and hijacked them from the straight path. فَكَيْفَ إِذَا جَمَعْنَهُمْ لِيَوْمٍ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. So, okay, leave all that aside. What's going to happen to them? How will it be? What will be their condition? What's their answer when we will gather them all together on a day in which there is no doubt? وَوُفِيَتْ كُلُّ نَفْسٍ مَا كَسَبَتْ. And every soul will be given the recompense of what it earned. وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. And they will not be wronged. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to surrender completely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and when we're invited to accept His guidance and accept His judgment, that we accept it with full open heart and mind. Ameen thumma ameen. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum.